I'm muted. Haha. Yeah, that was a big error on my part. Sorry, everybody. I was muted, but I wasn't saying anything interesting anyway, so it's all right. Thank you all so much for coming to our webinar. My name is Jonah. I'm the social media manager for Sports Reference, and just going to do a couple quick kind of ground rule things before we get started. So first of all, welcome. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening to come to the webinar. Like I said, we have over 100 people on the call today, so very exciting. We're so excited to go through all of the cool stuff that you can do on Baseball Reference, all of the interesting stuff you can find, and then how you can use Stathead to really dig deeper into the Baseball Reference database and answer really complex, interesting questions, everything you want to know about the upcoming slate of free agents, everything you need to put together your Hall of Fame cases for your favorite players. And also we'll just be taking your questions and trying to help you out with some stuff you'd like to know. So like I said, my name is Jonah. I'm the social media manager for Sports Reference. I also am joined on this call by Katie Sharp. She does customer success and social media for Stathead. And so she's going to come on later to kind of show you how to use all of the advanced Stathead tools. What I'm going to do first is kind of walk us through the main Baseball Reference website, show you some stuff that you might not know, and also some interesting stats that you can find that you'll be able to use when we get to the Stathead portion later on. Thank you all so much, by the way, for dropping your name and your location and your favorite free agent. I saw we had some people in Mexico City tuning in. We had people from all over the country. So that's very exciting. I saw Corey Seager and Carlos Correa seem like the front runners to get paid. And I kind of have to agree with that assessment. If you're not muted, if you don't mind muting yourself, I'm going to mute you all now. But if just something happens or you come in later or whatever. So yeah, without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Let me go to a page that I assume you're all pretty familiar with, the Baseball Reference homepage. This is probably something that you all have spent quite a lot of time on. So what I'm going to do with this part of the presentation is just take you a little deeper into the website, some of the nooks and crannies that I think people sometimes miss or maybe don't know even are there. So I want to start with a couple kind of newer stats that we've added to the website in the last year or so that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of, but I think are really cool and exciting. So first of all, I'm going to go here. In case you guys don't know, the Atlanta Braves won the World Series in 6 games. This is the box score for their title clinching game, game 6. And I'm sure you all are familiar with most of these stats in the box score, but there's one that we added around a year ago called cWPA. And I just want to highlight that because it's an extremely cool stat that we have on the site. And that C stands for championship, and then WPA stands for win probability added. So if you're familiar with WPA, that basically measures how much a player added or took away from his team's win probability throughout the course of the game. So in your plate appearance, if you hit 4 home runs, you added a ton of win probability to the team's chances. If assuming you go in at about 50-50, your team's probably going to win the game if you hit 4 home runs. If you strike out 4 times, your team's probably, less likely to win the game than normal because you made 4 terrible outs. So win probability measures how you affect within a single game. But obviously the goal beyond winning 1 game is to win the championship, to win the title, which again, I'm not sure if you all heard the Atlanta Braves did this year. So cWPA measures how your plate appearances affect the team's odds of winning the championship, of winning the entire title. So in a single game in April, those odds are not going to shift very dramatically. But here in Game 6 of the World Series, you can see that one player can have a tremendous effect on his team's odds of winning the title. Jorge Soler, who hit a bomb in Game 6, ended up improving Atlanta's odds of winning the championship by nearly 15% just in this one game, just in 3 at-bats. He shifted the title odds 15%. That's crazy when you think about that. At the same time, you can look this up for pitchers. So Max Fried pitched 6 shutout innings, had a huge impact. Luis Garcia got lit up kind of early, huge cWPA drop for the team. So championship win probability added is a cool stat that you can see not just for single games, but for an entire season. So if you didn't notice, I clicked on Freddie Freeman. Now we're on Freddie Freeman's baseball reference page. And if you scroll down to this advanced batting table, you can see his cWPA over the course of a full season. So you can see he added about 2.4% to the Braves championship odds during the regular season. But again, keep in mind, Jorge Soler added 15% in just that one game. So over the course of a 162 game season, a player will have a dramatic impact. 2.4% is very good. But what's happening in October is shifting these odds dramatically because one plate appearance can change the leverage so much. So that's cWPA. Dan Hirsch, who used to run the baseball gauge and now works here at Baseball Reference, he created that stat. And I think it's a really cool framework to look at how kind of heroic people are in October. Keep that in mind too for the Stathead presentation. There's some very cool stuff that you can do with that in Stathead. But the reason I started there is it segues into this table that was new for 2021 that we call the advanced batting table. And this has some stats that we added in the offseason. And it also brings up some stats that were hidden deeper on the players' pages that we wanted to put more kind of front and center for folks. Again, we're looking at Freddie Freeman, and you can see these are kind of separated out by section. The first section here is called, it's just batting, but these have some new-ish stats. One is called ROBA, and if you're an advanced stats person, you may be familiar with something called WOBA. This is kind of like our version of that. So it uses linear weights to kind of measure a player's offensive contributions, weighted in proportion to the event's run value. So a walk is worth a certain amount of runs, a certain fraction of a run. A single is worth a certain fraction of a run, a double, triple, a home run, and so on. And basically what this does is convert it measures all of that and then converts it to something that's roughly scaled to on-base percentage, just to make it kind of legible to someone who's used to looking at OBP or looking at batting average or looking at something and can kind of understand what the player did. So you can see Freddie at 466, if you think about that in terms of like an on-base percentage, that's an insanely good season. That was his MVP year last year. This year is still very good, 391. So that is ROBA. We also have RBAT, which takes the same kind of principle and applies it to and indexes it out. So RBAT is basically just the hitting component of WAR. WAR, of course, being wins above replacement, measures what every player does, measures every element of a player's on-field performance. You can see that on the player value table. This is RBAT. So these are the number of runs that the player contributes as a hitter, basically, for WAR, the endpoint being their WAR. But if you just look at that hitting component, you can create, we take that as the baseline for RBAT plus, which basically measures how much a player contributed as a hitter compared to league average. So in this stat, if he were a completely league average hitter, he would have a 100 RBAT. Because he has a 137 this year, that means he was 37% better than a league average hitter. The year he won MVP, he was 90% better than a league average hitter. So you can do this to kind of take a quick look at that stat and be like, oh, this is how he was compared to an average hitter in 2021. And it adjusts for park, It adjusts for the run environment he's playing in. It adjusts for all of that stuff. So it's a very good, quick way to see that. We also have surfaced kind of these other stats. So batting average on balls in play, you can see home run percentage. For those of you who like kind of the Statcast, the really cool new data, we've got a couple of those things now here on player pages. So you can see the average exit velocity for hitters and pitchers, and the hard hit percentage, which is basically the percentage of plays with an exit velocity over 95 miles per hour. So you can see all that back to 2015. And you can see it kind of year by year. So all that stuff is cool to look at on a player's page. I like to look at Freddie Freeman's batting stats a lot. But what is actually really interesting is to see how those stats compare to the rest of the league. How do you do that, you might ask? Well, that's why we're doing this webinar. So to see leaderboards, to see leaders, to see who is up in these kinds of stats, first you're going to want to go to the page for that season. So we'll go to the 2021 season page. And then if you've been to this page, you've seen kind of, the team leaderboards, hitting, batting. You can see the WAR leaders by position. That's wins above average, but basically the same idea. But you can also go to this gray bar and click to different things. You can see the standings over here. You can see the full schedule. And then we have these drop downs for fielding, batting, pitching, etc. So if you go to the batting drop down, you'll see all these different stat categories. I'm going to take us to advanced batting, the table we were just looking at, and you'll see all those same stats. There's ROBA, there's RBAT, exit velocity, hard hit percentage, except now these are leaderboards. So this is the whole team-wide stats. You can see these stats for full teams. You can also see them for players. So here's every player in Major League Baseball this year, all of their advanced batting stats. And if you click on the column header, it'll sort, it'll automatically filter out players who do not qualify for rate stats. So in this case, hitters who had like 5 plate appearances or whatever, and then it'll sort by that stat. So right now we're looking at the players with the highest average exit velocity this season. And no surprise, Aaron Judge, number 1, Vlad Guerrero, number 2. So you can actually look here and see who is hitting the ball the hardest, both in terms of the average exit velocity or who has the highest hard hit rate. You can see who's the leader in that RBAT plus stat I was talking about. A lot of MVP candidates here: Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Vlad, Tatis. And yeah, you can do this for any sort of stat like that. So you can do that for the advanced stats. You can also do that for a lot of other stats that are maybe a little deeper in. So like you can take a look at all of the base running stats, and you can see who got thrown out on the bases the most. You can see who went from first to third on a single the most times. Look at kind of effective base running or ineffective base running if you're looking at outs on the base paths. All of that stuff you can look at. And again, you can look at that by team. So that is kind of all of that. And then we've got a lot of that same stuff in reverse for pitchers. So if you go to the advanced pitching section, you see all of these same stats again, but this time they are laid out for pitchers. So here's the pitchers who allowed the highest average exit velocity. For pitchers, we want to see who allowed the lowest exit velocity. How does this affect you if you're researching free agents? If you're looking for, if your team signs a player and you want to see, well, why did they do this? You can obviously look at their basic stats, so if your team signs Max Scherzer, in the offseason, it's obvious why they did that. He's one of the best pitchers of all time. But, just to use him as an example, if you're curious, like, oh, I wonder what they saw in this guy, you could obviously look at his ERA and it was very good. And you could look at his innings pitch. You could even look at his WAR and be like, yeah, this guy is great. Obviously, that's why they signed him. But what the team is probably looking at looks a little bit more like these advanced stats. You can see, okay, he's allowing a very low average exit velocity. He's allowing a low hard hit rate. So even if he's someone who maybe got unlucky this last year, which he didn't, he was quite good. but you can see, oh, hey, he's allowing a very low hard hit rate. It looks like Scherzer actually got a little lucky in terms of his batting average and balls in play. So you can look at these stats and kind of decide, oh, hey, maybe the team sees some kind of value here. Maybe this guy was better than his numbers indicated. I'm pretty fired up. This is a good signing. Or, oh, weird, he had a 350 batting average, but his average exit velocity was pretty low. I don't know. Maybe this team is not. Maybe this guy's gonna regress a little bit. So if you're, trying to explain to your friends why your team is signing a guy, or why you're not high on a signing, or preparing for your fantasy draft, this is all really interesting stuff to look at. Really, all of those advanced stats are great for that. So that's that side. But I know a lot of us are into baseball history, and a lot of us are into kind of like, looking at older players. And obviously that discussion, a lot of it revolves around the Hall of Fame and who should be in the Hall of Fame, who shouldn't. The Hall of Fame balloting is going to start soon. There's the Eras Committee. And I know a lot of people are going to be interested in those debates. So I want to point out some stats that we have on the site that are explicitly based around understanding players in the context of their Hall of Fame cases and stuff like that. So right now I'm on our leaders page, which I think you're familiar with. If you're not, you can go here and see all kinds of career, single season, yearly leaderboards, and stuff like that. One thing I do want to mention, if you haven't been on these pages recently, is that as part of our Negro Leagues or Major Leagues project, a lot of these leaderboards have some faces who might be newer to you. So if you haven't looked into kind of, some of the stuff that we added a few months ago, I really recommend it. Looking at some of the players like Oscar Charleston, Turkey Stearns, and getting to see them kind of in the context of what they accomplished in their career. Very exciting stuff. And so just singling that out. But for the purposes of the Hall of Fame, obviously these kind of leaderboards, batting average, home runs, RBIs, counting stats, we all know all of that stuff. But how do we decide who actually should be in the Hall of Fame? We have a few different stats. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom here, these in this assorted leaderboard category, you can see some of these Hall of Fame statistics. So here's a system called the Hall of Fame Monitor that you can look at. That's just kind of a number for players that's kind of measuring which benchmarks they hit and kind of what their Hall of Fame case looks like. So if you have 100 in the monitor, you would be a good Hall of Fame candidate. So you'll notice like Mike Trout was at 140 or something. He obviously could probably retire tomorrow and get into the Hall of Fame. That's kind of an older system. You can look at what's called black ink. So this is how many times did you lead your league in a category. Babe Ruth led a ton of times. Josh Gibson led a ton of times. These are clear-cut, obvious Hall of Famers. Leading in a category, leading in a major category, generally a good sign that you accomplish things in your career. If you did it a bunch, like Josh Gibson did, you're probably one of the best players of all time if you led a ton of times. So black ink, that just refers to, and you can see it on the player page, if something is in black, highlighted in black, that means that the player led the league in that stat. So if a player's batting average, I'll just go to Josh Gibson's page so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so look, his whole page, it might as well all be black ink. He led in on-base percentage, he led in slugging, he led in OPS plus, led in home runs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 12 or 13 times. Just an incredible player. So you can see that here's Babe Ruth, again, probably more bold than more black ink than, the normal kind, because he led in home runs so many times, he led in OPS so many times. So these are all kind of like, black ink way to see how many times did someone lead the league. If you go to their page and you see it a lot, generally a sign that you're looking at one of the best players of all time. But the system I use the most is called JAWS. And this was invented by Jay Jaffe. It basically uses WAR to measure a player's Hall of Fame case, but there's two components of it that it averages together. So first it takes their best 7 seasons, their peak years. And then it takes their career WAR, so their total WAR over their entire span, and then it averages them together to create JAWS. And what this does is kind of strikes a middle ground for me between players who we might call compilers, who played for a lot of years and put up good stats that way, and players who maybe burned bright for a few years but did not have the longevity that we want out of a Hall of Famer. And this kind of is about striking that middle ground. Okay, you played for a long time and you were great at your peak, or you should probably be in the Hall of Fame. Even if you don't like WAR at all and you think WAR is a bad stat, I work for Baseball Reference, I don't agree, but you're free to obviously think that. This is still a very useful page because you can see the number of times, you can see sortable leaderboards by position to see, oh, how many times did this player win MVP, and compare it to other players who are already in the Hall of Fame at their position. How many home runs did this player hit? Is that like a high amount for a catcher to go into the Hall of Fame versus, just looking at the straight up leaderboard? It's not going to have the same sort of position by breakdown. You can also see the number of times a player led in WAR or appeared in the top 5 or the top 10 and stuff like that. So I'm on the catcher page right now. If you go to this drop down for Hall of Fame stats, you can see for every position. So I'll go to shortstop, and you can see, again, kind of the same sort of thing. So here's career WAR, peak WAR, and then JAWS, the average of the two. We also have, I'll go back to catcher for this one. We have a new thing that we added this year, WAR per 162. So this shows you the players' WAR, average career WAR over a 162 game season. So instead of just the raw WAR, it's kind of WAR as a rate stat prorated for a 162 game season. And the reason I went to catcher is obviously to show you Josh Gibson here, lapping the field, 10.5 WAR per 162 game season. That is an insane amount of WAR for a player to have. So you can also, obviously see how many times they were number 1 in WAR, top 5, etc. So that is the JAWS page, which I think is really cool, as well as JAWS itself, another really great Hall of Fame system. And then the last thing, if you're just like, I don't care about any of that, I just want to know how many times they led the league in home runs, you can go to this page, most times leading the league, that I just clicked on over there. And this will show you, who led the league in WAR, who led the league in batting average, on base, all of that stuff, all the way through kind of basically all the stats we have. So that is how you use the site to put together a Hall of Fame case or to evaluate a Hall of Fame case. So let me show you maybe some more concrete examples by going to some of these pages. So let me go to the pitcher page. Or actually, I'll go to shortstop, since I know Alex Rodriguez about to appear on the ballot. That's going to be, for some people, a very controversial pick for reasons that maybe don't apply to his on the field candidacy. But as far as his actual stats go, you see here on the shortstop page, he is the second shortstop all time in JAWS. He's second in WAR. He's the only person on this page to win MVP 3 times, only one to lead in WAR 5 times. So kind of looking at these stats, you can see that he has a great case as far as that goes. Jimmy Rollins is someone who is maybe coming up soon, who has kind of an interesting case too, just kind of looking through here. He's got, you can see very quickly, he ranks sort of towards maybe the middle-ish of the pack in JAWS, but there are players who got into the Hall of Fame kind of in his vicinity. So that'll be an interesting one for people to consider. But if you're like, as a starting point, if you're just curious who's going to be on the ballot this year, that's the last thing I kind of want to show you is our actual Hall of Fame section. So if you go down here to awards, you'll see this first thing is the Hall of Fame. So for our Hall of Fame, we have a list of every player who and non-player, everyone who has been inducted into the Hall of Fame. If they made it as on a BBWA ballot, you can see their vote share, and you can sort to see who had the highest vote share. You can also go and take a look at the balloting by year. So you can go and look back at last year and see who got voted in and their share of the vote, as well as their kind of like, stats. Or you can look ahead to this year's ballot and say, okay, here are the players who are on this year's ballot. Here's where they kind of left off in the voting. Here are their monitor stats. Here's their JAWs, here are their actual like counting stats, and make your decision that way. So, oh, that was 2021. I'm sorry, I'm a year off. Here is the 2022 ballot. So you can see here, once again, like I was saying, the WAR, the JAWs, the counting stats. One thing that's cool that I think we just did this for this year. I think this is new. You can see the era committee ballots too. So in addition to the BBWAA, the Hall of Fame has these committees who are going to be voting on who has gone past their eligibility period, but who we want to induct in. So you can take a look at these at some of these players as well, their JAWs, their counting stats, and stuff like that. A lot of really interesting research is being done on here. I can't recommend these pages highly enough. If you're into the Hall of Fame voting, taking a look at all of this stuff is really great. But I'm brushing up against time, so I'm going to stop now so we can take some questions before we get into the Stathead part of the presentation, which is really going to show you, if you're into this Hall of Fame stuff, if you're into career career contextual, like looking at stuff, Stathead's going to blow your mind. But we can take some questions on baseball reference before we go ahead. So I'm not sure if there were questions as I was going. If you haven't yet, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we can get to them. We'll probably take a few here and then move on to the Stathead part, and then take a few more after that. But let me take a look in the chat, or I'm not sure if any.
Yeah, Jonah, I answered most of them. There was just this one that came in about the Negro leagues.
Okay.
If you want to.
Yeah, what was the question? Or I can pull
it about adding more Negro leagues to the ledger.
Oh, that's a great question. So if you have first of all, if you have questions about about the Negro Leagues or Major Leagues project, or kind of just the whole process behind that, let me share my screen so I can show you right here. Oh, well, it's not on. There it is. So if you go to kind of the main like landing page for it, we have a lot of articles that explain how this database was constructed, the history of the Negro Leagues. Very interesting stuff to read that I can't recommend highly enough. Right now we have season level data for league play from 1920 to 1948. Those are the years that historians generally consider Negro League play as major leagues. So we're deferring to their judgment on that. But that's just a small portion of what those players actually did. They were playing 200 plus games per season, and just a percentage of those were league play. The rest was barnstorming, exhibition games, stuff like that. The researchers across the country are constantly working to build out databases with more of that data, but it's a time-consuming process. They go through newspapers, they dig around through historical records, finding box scores and transcribing them. So it takes time, but as more information comes in, we're constantly adding it to the database. Our friends at Seamheads are also working to put together box score data, so that we'll actually eventually be able to have game-by-game level data for all of these players as well. Right now, it's mainly just season level data. With some, we have postseason games and all-star games and stuff like that. But over time, we're eventually, Seamheads is eventually going to build out a database of box scores So you can actually look and see important historical games, career milestones, things like that. It's very cool. And one of the interesting things about, a history project like this is it's a constantly evolving thing. As new information is discovered, as new research is done, these numbers are going to grow and become more and more complete. So again, I encourage you to go to our website if you have questions about that, and kind of look and read on this information. But you can also email us. We're always happy to go over it. So I hope they answered the question. And yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else, or if you want to start the Stathead stuff. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just answering one question here in the chat for somebody, but that is about gray ink, which is actually a top 10 leaders. So you mentioned black ink, which is league leaders. So gray ink is top 10 in a stat.
Yeah, sorry for overlooking that, but that's a great one. And also, if you go onto a player's page, if it's like gold, that means they're like an all-time leader. So there's kind of a different, there's a few different kinds of like things to indicate that. But like on a player's like career total, if there's like at the bottom, if there's like a little gold kind of highlight around it, that means that they're the all-time leader in that stat. So on Barry Bonds' page, you would see that for home runs. Whether how we feel about that, is a question for another time. But at that, I will turn it over to Katie. But just for Jeffrey's question, everything I showed you is totally for free. It's all on the website, and it's all just a matter of you digging around and finding it and seeing what you see. All of that stuff, my half of the presentation is just totally just stuff that's on the website. But now Katie is going to go into our subscription service, Stathead, which really lets you unlock the power of these stats and kind of the database that we have to really take your research to the next level. So Katie, if you want to take it away.
So welcome everyone. Thank you, Jonah, for that awesome presentation. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. I am going to show you Stathead, which is essentially, it's our subscription-based service. And it's literally like the most powerful research tool for baseball on the internet. There's no comparison. What I'm going to do first is basically what it does is it lets you sort of sort and filter through our entire database of MLB stats as far back as we have for each of the different types of stats. And there's a really cool interface you can use. So it's all web-based. There's no, you don't have to have some sort of API connection or anything like that. You don't have to have database skills. It's all web-based, and it's awesome. And so what I'm going to go through is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a basic search, like just how do you do any type of search? Because the good thing about Stathead is that all of the different search tools are set up very similarly. So if you can figure out one, you're probably going to be able to figure out the rest. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to go through all of the different search tools because I think we're up to like 30 or something of them at this point right now. I'm just going to go through the ones that are really most relevant to free agency and Hall of Fame. So hopefully, if you guys already have Stathead and you've used it in the past a lot, this beginning part might be a little bit repetitive, but just want to get people caught up because there's a lot of people here probably that don't have a Stathead subscription, and we'd like for y'all to have one. So hopefully we'll convince you. All right, so what you do is I'm going to first, I'll share my screen here, and we'll get on the baseball Stathead page. All right, so hopefully you guys can see that right now. And so this is going to be your starting point. It's a stathead.com/baseball. And this is where you're going to find all of the different finders. And that's what we basically are, the search tools, the way that you search through the database. And so when you're starting out with the search, the first thing you want to do is you want to pick your question. So what question are you going to answer? And then based on your question, that's how you're going to choose what type of finder you're going to use. So is it going to be like a season thing? Is it a game? Is it a split? You can see all the different finders here. So based on your question, that's the type of finder that you're gonna use. So then once you had your question and you know what finder you're going to use, let's just go into the player batting season finder. The next thing you're going to want to do is adjust these radio buttons here at the top. And what that does is it basically determines like what kind of question you're asking. Is it single seasons? Is it combined seasons, careers? For games, is it single games? Is it combined games? Is it season games? So I'm going to explain all that in a little bit, but then that's the second thing you want to do. And then once you have that set is when you go and you set your filters. And so that's like basically the content of the question. Are you looking for the most home runs? Are you looking for the most home runs for a player that had 50 RBIs or fewer in a season, something like that? So here's where you can sort. You find all the stats there. You set your seasons. You can set the different leagues that you want to look at. And then you have your filters here. And these are basically going to be the same across all the different finders. So you've got your statistical filters, pretty self-explanatory. You got your biographical filters. Those are more like age, what type, they throw, the bat, that type of thing. And then you've got your status filters, which is the rookie, Hall of Fame, all-star type of things, active players. So the important thing is, these are going to be pretty much the same on every page. And then these things up here might change depending on which finder you're going to use. And also the statistics in here will change depending on the finder. So that is like the 1,000 or 30,000 foot view of how you do a search. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into kind of just show you what like I said before, I'm going to show you the different finders that I think you'll be most relevant for your research for free agency and Hall of Fame. And we'll start off here, the batting season finder. This is basically like going to be a really important one because it'll allow you to find out why a team signed a player, or what a player brings to a team. So what you can do here is that's different from like the normal leaderboards that you would find on Baseball Reference, is you can set different standards. So maybe there's a player there that doesn't meet like the batting average qualifications, but you still want to see how they compare to the other players. That's where you can put in here and you say, okay, well, 502 is the normal, but maybe I just want to look at all people with 300 plate appearances and sort them by, I'll go up to here, and for 2021, and we're going to sort that by OPS, something like that. And then you click your get results. Or maybe you even want to do something like, maybe your team is looking to sign Justin Verlander, right? And he's 38. He's going to be 38 years old when he's pitching next year. So what is kind of like the historical precedent for pitchers age 38 or older? How many of them actually like pitched 150 innings, have an above average ERA? That's something you can do here. So what you would do is actually, if we're in the pitcher one, we'll go to the pitcher one. So what you would want to do is maybe look at like last year, how many pitchers there were that were age 38 or older, and sort them by maybe their ERA plus, which is an adjusted ERA. So you would go down to age here. You can set the age for 38, and we can actually just look at, I think a more interesting thing is just like how many innings do these guys pitch, right? So how much is a 38-year-old really going to be able to pitch? We see only 3 of the 8 actually pitched 150 innings. So you can go back further years. Maybe you just want to look at last 5 or 6 years, something like that. It's not a high number. So that's, there's so many more things you can do with the season finder. But I think that is where it's a really intuitive tool. Some of these different radio buttons here at the top, like I said, this is for single seasons. This one will let you look at combined seasons or careers. So if you wanted to do this between these seasons, you know, get you do your search there. This one's another interesting one. This one looks at seasons matching the criteria. So like most seasons with, you know, 200 strikeouts, if you wanted to look up guys like that, you would click this button, go down to the statistical filters and set wherever strikeouts are, strikeouts greater than or equal to 100, 200, and then you would get the results there. So those, for research purposes for free agency, going to be the most important things there that you want. The next one I think that's really important for free agency is, no surprise, our batting comparison finder. This is basically going to settle any debate of two different players. So the obvious example here is, you know, Carlos Correa versus Corey Seager, right? So what you can do here is there's a couple different options. So you can look at just single seasons or their entire career, or you can compare groups of seasons. So maybe you wanted to look at the first 5 seasons for these guys, right? Or maybe you just wanted to look at last year, right? The most recent season. And this is a super easy way to really to compare their statistics, right? You know, one on top of the other. And we go through all the different types of statistics that you would have on a player page. So this is probably going to be one of the ones that you'll use most for free agency. So I would suggest, you know, bookmarking that and getting familiar with it. Another one that I think will be helpful is the batting split finders and pitching split finders. What this does is it lets you kind of identify players who do well in specific situations. So let's say you wanted to see which players are going to be the best with runners in scoring position, like a batting average. So you can't get that on the regular leaderboards on Baseball Reference, but you can do that here. So you would set this to 2021. You'd go down to batting average, and for your split type, you'd choose bases occupied is the one where runners in scoring position is found. These are a little bit tough. I mean, there's just so many of them, so you kind of got to figure out which one you want to use. But if you're looking for runners in scoring position, which is a frequent one, it's bases occupied, and then it is actually the first one right there. All right, and so then maybe you want to look at guys that just had, you know, 100 plate appearances in this situation. So you do that, and this is where you find, so there you have your list. And like I said in the chat, unfortunately, there's no way to just filter for free agents in any of these queries. But there are plenty of free agent lists out there. MLB Trade Rumors has a really comprehensive one. I'd suggest using that. So you can see, but if maybe you had some player in mind, you know, Corey Seager here, we know he's a free agent, see where he ranks, and obviously Freddie Freeman as well. See where they rank in terms of specific situations like runners in scoring position. So that's the split finder. Couple others, I mean, the span finder is something that we added this year. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, what it does is it looks at performances over a span of a certain number of games. So let's see, and you can look at, you can also set it. So in terms of the span, you can look at any kind of span. So like any 5-game span or something from the start of the season, the end of the season, start of career, end of career. You can see the options right there. So maybe you want to look at some guy like who was the hottest batter in like his last 60 games or something like that. So you would check end of season as the start, span, or end, something like that. Like who hit the most home runs in the last 60 games of the season. So maybe if you're kind of doing that type of research, you think that there's something to do, that's something maybe like with momentum to heading into the next year, you're looking for players like that. This can be a useful tool. And it does take a little bit of time to do. And forget it. All right, we don't like to wait here. So we're just going to go back here to the home page because we don't really like to wait that long. But one other thing I want to show you for the free agency stuff, which Jonah alluded to earlier, was with the championship, the cWPA. So there is one tool that we have where you can look up performances. So maybe you want to just look up like players that were super clutch last year, right? So what did we have here is this pivotal play finder. And what it does is it basically breaks down every single event in terms of a couple different things. You can look at WPA, which is regular win probability, championship win probability, and then these leverage index basically tells you how important the situation was. So let's say you wanted to just, all right, we're just gonna see who had like the best play. It doesn't matter about championship WPA, but like the most impactful play for a game. So who was like the most clutch? So you would look that up, you'd sort by win probability, and then you'd click get results. And we're just doing for last year. So these are like, this is if you want to, you're just like into like clutch or whatever, you think that's a real thing. Oh, interestingly, it was a walk-off home run in this game right here. It's like between the Phillies and the Braves. So anyways, another tool that you can use in your research, not going to be as useful, I think, obviously, as the player comparison finder and the season finders, which I think are going to be the two ones that you'll use the most. And then quickly wanted to show you a couple things for Hall of Fame. So if you go back to the season finders, obviously you can use this to find out, amazing, the players, their career statistics and everything like that. But one thing I wanted to show you was that there is a filter here under status filters for Hall of Fame. So you can look at guys who are on the in the Hall of Fame, or they were just on the ballot. So this is kind of useful if you have a particular player that's in mind that's maybe up for the Hall of Fame this year, and you want to see how they would compare to players that are already in the Hall of Fame. You can use this filter right here on the player season finder. And then obviously the like I said before, the comparison finders are going to be really super useful for Hall of Fame stuff. And then one last one that I want to show you is these neutralized stat finders. And let's see, here we go. So what this basically doing is it allows you to compare players across different types of seasons and different run environments. So you kind of put them all into the same context. And so you can choose what context you want that to be right here. So this is familiar right here. We saw that. And so then this is where you choose the context that you want to look at. And it would be basically you can look at like some sort of neutral park from 2021, or you can do some sort of extreme hitters park, which would be the 2000 Rockies, or an extreme pitchers park, which is the 1968 Dodgers. So those are different run scoring environments. So it puts everybody on the same page. And just one thing I want to mention about this is that there's no change in the role for the player. So they're not going to all get 162 games, right? They're going to keep their same number of games played. And the same with like pitchers. So like somebody pitches, 200 innings in 2021, he's not going to automatically then move up to like 400. If you go back to 1920, you put him in a 1920 run environment. So that's the thing to remember. There's no change in the role for the pitchers. And there's no adjustments for like anything subjective, like the role of the bullpens, or increasing foreign talent, with the integration or anything like that. So you can find out more about that on the About page on a Baseball Reference. But I just wanted to mention that as a kind of a good idea if you wanted to kind of put people on, maybe you're trying to compare somebody from the 1920s to the 1980s or something like that. It allows you to do that. And then one final thing that I did want to show you, so that's basically the Hall of Fame stuff. Jonah showed you a ton of that stuff with that we have of those special leaderboards. Those are all found on Baseball Reference. You don't need a Stathead subscription for those. Baseball. And then finally, before we take some questions, I wanted to show you how to download and share all of this data, because that is going to really let you leverage the power of the Stathead tools. So it's super easy. So for sharing data, all you have to do is, if you do a query, right, you click this button right here, and it will pop up a little link that you can share with anybody. They don't have to be a Stathead subscriber. Excuse me. So you can like send this in a text, you can put it on Twitter or whatever, you can put it in your blog post. Just copy that, and then anybody will be able to access your query and the results of your query. And then to download the data, it's super easy. For any table right here, you just hover your mouse over this export data link right here, and then you can either get it directly to Excel. So this will download it directly to Excel. So you can see here, automatic download right there. Or you can get the table in sort of a CSV format, which you can then paste into Google Sheets or whatever database program you use. So you do that, and then it's just a copy and paste right there. So that is going to be super useful. One thing I do mention is that you can only download the amount of data that's on one page. So even though there may be like 1,000 results for your query, you can only download however many. So this page has 300 rows. So you can download that. Then you would have to click next page, go, and then download it again. So that, I think, is all that I have for showing you Stathead. I know that it went super quickly through everything, but there's a lot of data there. There's a lot to learn. And the best advice that I can give you, if you do want to try it out, like I said, we have free trials. And if you are willing to go for an annual subscription, we do have discounts on annual subscriptions that Jonah will tell you about in a little bit. But the best advice I can give you for learning Stathead is to just do as many queries as possible. Just trial and error. You got some free time, just go in there and poke around the different stats, the different finders, and you'll get a hang of it. There's really no special sauce or anything like that. It's really just getting the experience and doing as many as you can in your free time or for your research or whatever you need. So Jonah, how are we doing on questions?
So there are a couple things that people wanted to demonstrate that we'll get to in just a second. But before we do that, got to pay some bills here. Got to sell some subscriptions. So like Katie was saying, if you are interested in trying out, if you're interested in Stathead, if you think this is a cool tool, since I know we're pressing up on the 7 o'clock, I wanted to start here. If you want to give it, if you want to sign up, you'll get $20 off of an annual subscription if you use the code baseball20. So this is a special offer for everyone who signed up for this presentation today, and it lasts through Friday. So you have a couple days to think about it, or rewatch the webinar, give it a try. But if you want to get $20 off, it's $80 normally for an annual baseball subscription. This will knock it down to 60 with the code baseball20. If you're a fan of sports other than baseball, if you like basketball, football is obviously coming up on kind of the real crucial part of the season. Hockey is going. We have these same kinds of tools. A lot of these tools are the same. A lot of them are, sports specific, but we have a suite of tools for all of those sports. You can get access to the full setup, all of the sports for $140. So that's $20 off of the normal annual price of $160 using the code StatHead20. So I just wanted to get that in before we hit 7 o'clock. I'll show that again, and you'll get an email with all of that information. But there were a couple of questions in the chat that I thought it would be best to kind of demonstrate to people. So Katie, the first thing is someone was asking how you can use Stathead to find postseason stats like hits leaders, maybe leaders in an LCS, stuff like that. So how would they go about doing that?
Sure. Let me share my screen again. And all right, unfortunately, there's no easy way to do it because we don't have a season. If you're looking for postseason stats, we don't have a postseason option in our season finders, but you can use the game finders. So we'll go to the batting game finder. And what you can do is, so Jonah, were they looking for like season stats or just like single game stuff?
The question was kind of just broadly like, just kind of like, records or stuff like that. So I just figured showing them kind of around.
Yeah, sure. Stuff. So the only the game finder is where you're going to be looking for most of your stats. So if you're looking for single game performances in the postseason, it's pretty simple. You check this box right here and then set your criteria over here. And you want to just make sure that you choose postseason right there in terms of the game type. And that'll just automatically, and then from there, you can choose what type of playoff round, if it's World Series, LCS, whatever. And then you can even go down to the game number or the type of game, whether it's a clinching game or an elimination game, game 7, something like that. So that's where you're going to be able to find, that's how you're going to be able to find single game performances. If you wanted to look up, more like season totals, what you're going to have to do is you're going to choose this one right here. And this option works best for counting statistics. So like maybe like most home runs in a single postseason or most RBIs or something like that. So show you a little trick here. So we're going to set it to there. We got our postseason shows it right there. And then what we're going to do actually is we're going to set statistical filters. We're looking at most home runs in a single postseason. We can do home runs is greater than 1. So work with me here. And then we're going to get our results. So what this is doing is it's looking for the most games in a season where a player hit at least 1 home run, right? And then what you can do here is then you can sort by the total home runs in this results table. And that would be your answer. So it would be Rosarena last year in 2000 last year when he hit 10 home runs for the Rays. Counting statistics are a little bit more difficult, obviously, because you kind of have to do the same thing. I just would not use, rate statistics. There's no real good way to look up rate statistics with these tools right here. But if you're looking at just counting statistics, home runs, doubles, triples, hits, anything like that, this is how you would do it for the postseason.
Yeah, and you can do that also for career stats if you do the most matching games in multiple seasons.
Yep.
So then I know we're over time, but someone was, we got a question about the event finder. I was wondering if you could just take a couple minutes, maybe, broad strokes, how do you use that?
Couple minutes. All right, we'll try. Yeah. All right, let's go back to my screen again.
That looks like her.
All right, so we'll go to the batting event finder. So what this
Oh,
you
sorry,
muted me
Katie, you got
there.
muted there.
Oh God, come on. All right, so literally what this is doing is it's looking at every single event in our database, which goes back to 1916. So an event is like a single. You'll see here the event types. We have home runs, singles, doubles, triples, all these things right here. And what then you can do is you can use this criteria box in here to set your criteria. So if we're looking for what a lot of what you'll do is and often a use of this is, looking up walk-off home runs, with 2 outs against, the Red Sox or something like that. So basically it lets you set as many filters as you want in here and then find the specific events. So we'll list the events you see here in the results table here. So let's say we wanted to look up, since 1974, home runs, and we wanted to look up walk-off home runs, and we wanted to look up all the walk-off home runs that have been hit against the Red Sox. So we'd be using opponents is this filter right here, and we go down to BOS right here, and all of them, let's say, okay, well, yeah, that's cool, but we just want the ones that are with 2 outs, right? And maybe we want only ones where the team was trailing in the game. So we can actually have a filter over here for they were behind. So, all right, so when we do all that, this is what we're looking up. We're looking up home runs, walk-off home runs against the Red Sox with 2 outs, with the team trailing. We're getting really specific here. And then we get our results. And then we have summary statistics up here. So you can see, and then we have all of the times it happened down here in this results table. So like I said, this is literally the most powerful thing. You can get lost here forever. But what it does is it allows you to do super specific searches on different types of events to find out how historic some sort of play is when you're watching a game.
Yeah, and with the event finder especially, I think that's one where it's like it comes with practice. So like if you're watching a game and you notice an interesting situation, plugging it into the event finder, that's kind of how I learned to use it, was just over the years just watching games and being like, oh wow, I wonder when the last time that happened, or why. I was working on the account during game 1 of the World Series, and obviously that started with a home run from Jorge Soler. Using the event finder, you can plug that in, and in 3 seconds you could see that was the first time any World Series game 1 had started with a home run in the top of the first inning. So that sort of thing is very easy to do in the event finder in just a matter of seconds. So I think those are all the questions that we have time for. There was an interesting question about how to find home stats compared to away stats. You can actually do some of that in the split finder. There's a stat called TOPS plus, which is how the players numbers in that stat compared to their overall numbers. So using that, you can kind of see oh, they were better at home than average, so therefore they were worse away, or stuff like that. That's really good. And the split finder also has one called has an option where you can do match any listed, so you can see all of the different splits. So those are just a couple things I wanted to mention that kind of came up in the chat. But I think that we are probably running out of time. So let me just end here by once again reminding you all of the awesome discount that we have.
Just one thing to note is that it does expire November 19th. It's not. We're not extending it to Christmas. We're not that generous. We love you guys, but we got to make some money.
That is a very important detail that I'm glad Katie caught. So this is going to expire this Friday, 11/19. But that gives you a few days to, again, rewatch the webinar, tool around on Stathead, see what you think. If you are interested in this, use Baseball 20. You'll get $20 off of an annual subscription. This is the annual plan only. $20 off of the annual subscription. Normally it's $80. This will make it 60. If you want access to all the sports, basketball, hockey, pro football, that would normally be $160. Use the code StatHead20, and they'll knock it down to $140. I do want to take a moment and just say that we had a lot of really great questions in the chat. We really appreciate it. We tried to get to as many as possible. I'm not sure, there were probably some we missed. There are probably some that are rattling around still. There are probably some that will come to you later as you're using the sites. So we're here for you all the time, not just at these webinars. If you have questions, we want to hear them, and we want to help you work through them. If you want to get in touch with us, if you're on social media, there's a number of ways to do it. We're on Twitter. Stathead has an account at Stathead. You can add it or DM it. Baseball Reference also has an account, baseball_ref. We'll answer your questions on there. We have an Instagram page, baseball.reference. If you have any questions, if you prefer Instagram, same deal with Facebook at Stathead at baseball.reference. If you like good old email, just email us, support@stathead.com. If you have questions, there were a lot of really good feature suggestions or stuff that you all would like to see on the website. We have a whole team of programmers that are constantly working to add stuff. So if there's anything that you'd like to see, send it to us. There are no bad ideas. A lot of stuff that we add is because the user's like, why isn't this here? And we're like, why isn't that there? That should be there. So if you want to reach out to us at any point, we would love to hear from you. And definitely, especially if you have questions about how to use Stathead or how to use the site, if you're lost, if you're not sure if you can do something, we would love to help you out. So that will do it for our webinar. Again, Baseball 20 and Stathead 20 to get $20 off. We'll be emailing you probably tomorrow morning with a link to a video recording of this whole presentation so you can watch it again if you missed anything or just want to refresh yourself. And that will also include the discount codes again. So don't worry if you didn't get it or forget it in the morning or something. We'll be emailing that to you. They're good through Friday. But again, I just want to thank you all so much for coming and taking some time out of your evening to talk about baseball stats with us. I had a great time, and I hope you all did too. And we'll see you this time next year when the Braves repeat.
Thanks, everyone.